Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
Here begins the essay, Benjamin Lee Whorf's 1936 exploration. The punctual and segmentative aspects of verbs in Hope represents a pivotal, if sometimes contentious, contribution to linguistic relativity. This essay undertakes a detailed examination of Whorf's arguments presented in this paper, assessing their internal coherence, evidentiary basis and overall impact on the understanding of linguistic influence on thought. The analysis proceeds systematically, mirroring the paper's structure and focusing on the specific claims made within each section. Section 1 Introduction to Hope and Verbal Modifications. Whorf begins by introducing the Hopi language and immediately asserts its profound differences from what he terms Issei, or standard average, European languages. This introduction forms the bedrock of his larger argument concerning linguistic relativity. He highlights what he views as fundamental distinctions in how Hopi structures reality, primarily through its verbal system. Whorf initially claims that Hopi lacks tense in the Issei sense, a declaration that shapes much of the subsequent analysis. He argues that Hopi verb modifications do not primarily indicate time relations like past, present, or future, but rather different types of validity or assertion concerning the event. While persuasive, this initial claim benefits from further critical unpacking to assess its accuracy and subsequent implications. His focus on hope as a unique linguistic paradigm to illustrate cognitive divergence relies on specific grammatical interpretations that must undergo rigorous scrutiny. Section 2 Punctual and Segmentative Aspects Defining the Concepts. This section represents the core of Whorf's argument. He introduces the concepts of punctual and segmentative aspects. Punctual verbs, according to Whorf, represent events viewed as wholes, unanalyzed into temporal parts. Segmentative verbs, on the other hand, express actions analyzed into phases, continuations, or repetitions. Whorf claims this distinction is fundamental to Hopi verb structure and intimately connected to its distinct view of reality. He proposes that this aspectual difference is encoded grammatically, not merely lexically, and thereby structures how Hopi speakers conceive of events. The strength of this claim depends critically on the accuracy of his interpretation of Hopi verb morphology, demanding careful consideration of alternative interpretations and the depth of cross-linguistic data. The conceptual frameworks of punctuality and segmentation have wide applicability to other languages, but the exclusivity of these aspects defining Hopi verbs as distinct needs further justification. Section 3 Manifestations of Aspect in Hopi Verb. Conjugation. Whorf proceeds to detail specific Hopi verb conjugations, attempting to demonstrate how the punctual and segmentative aspects are grammatically marked. He presents examples of verb prefixes, suffixes, and other modifications, claiming they consistently reflect this aspectual distinction. For instance, he may present a particular prefix as always indicating a segmentative interpretation or a specific suffix as invariably signaling punctuality. A critical eye demands a thorough examination of these conjugations. Do the grammatical markers he identifies consistently convey these meanings across all contexts? Are there exceptions or instances where these markers appear to function differently? Furthermore, the analysis also benefits from the consideration of alternative interpretations of these markers, potentially explaining the data without recourse to the punctual-segmentative dichotomy. It is essential to verify whether the described grammatical markers are consistently and unambiguously correlated to the aspects. Whorf claims any ambiguities or counterexamples weaken his argument. Section 4 The Assertional System and Validity Forms. Whorf elaborates on the idea that Hopi verbs do not express tense, but instead convey nuances of validity or assertion. He posits a system of validity forms that indicate the speaker's attitude towards the event, their certainty about its occurrence, or its status within different realms of existence. Whorf attributes to each validity form a specific epistemic meaning, such as indicating an event is expected, remembered, or merely possible. He thus suggests that Hopi grammar prioritizes the expression of epistemic stance over temporal location. This claim is significant and demands a thorough evaluation. First, it is essential to evaluate the range and expressiveness of these validity forms. Do they adequately account for the range of temporal references that speakers need to convey? Second, one needs to consider whether these validity forms are independent of temporal reference or subtly intertwined with it. It's also important to observe if the forms are as purely assertional as claimed or if they have other functions, like conveying modality or emphasis. Section 5. The objective and subjective realms, habituals and potentialities. Whorf then differentiates between what he terms the objective and subjective realms in Hopi thought and language. He claims that the objective realm encompasses manifest events, while the subjective realm concerns potential events, expectations, and mental states. This distinction, he argues, is reflected in the way Hopi speakers describe habitual actions versus potential actions. Whorf claims that Hopi grammar uses different verb forms to express these distinct realms, and that this difference reflects a profound cognitive distinction. Habituals, for example, might be described using a specific verb form, reflecting the objective realm, while potential actions utilize another verb form associated with subjectivity. This again must undergo careful scrutiny. Does this objective-subjective distinction truly map neatly onto the grammatical forms he identifies? Are there alternative interpretations of these forms, perhaps involving modality or other factors? Are there instances where speakers use these forms in ways that blur the line between the objective and subjective realms? The claim is bold and requires a thorough evaluation of the empirical evidence. Section 6. The absence of tense and its implications. Whorf reiterates his central claim that Hopi lacks tense in the Isai sense. He argues that the absence of tense is not merely a superficial grammatical difference, but rather a reflection of a fundamentally different way of conceiving of time. He argues that Hopi speakers do not spatially conceptualize time as a linear progression of past, present, and future, as he believes Isai speakers do. Instead, they allegedly focus on the process of becoming later, emphasizing a continuous unfolding of events rather than their fixed location in time. This assertion is one of the most contentious aspects of Whorf's work. It is crucial to examine the evidence he presents supporting this claim and to consider alternative interpretations of Hopi temporal expressions. The absence of explicit tense markers, if it is indeed proven, does not necessarily imply the absence of a temporal concept or conscious experience of time. It is possible that Hopi speakers express temporal relations in ways different from Isai languages, but still possess a sense of past, present, and future. Section 7. The relation to the Hopi space system. Whorf extends the argument by linking the Hopi temporal system to their spatial conception. He suggests that the Hopi spatial system is also organized according to perceptual and functional principles, rather than an absolute grid based on Euclidean geometry. He claims that Hopi speakers describe spatial relations in terms of the observer's point of view and the relative locations of objects, rather than using fixed coordinates. He suggests that this spatial conception is interconnected with their temporal conception, and that both reflect a holistic and dynamic view of reality. The connection between temporal and spatial conceptualizations presents a difficult challenge within an evaluation, demanding both deep comparative analysis of language and extensive study of cultural frameworks. Evaluating the claim requires examining the data supporting his interpretation of Hopi spatial language and considering whether alternative explanations might account for the observed phenomena. Do Hopi speakers truly lack a sense of cardinal directions or fixed spatial coordinates? Or do they simply express spatial relations in a different way? The interaction between spatial and temporal conceptualizations adds another layer of complexity to the analysis. Section 8, Plurals and enumeration count versus mass nouns. Whorf addresses the way Hopi handles plurals and enumeration, claiming significant divergence from SAE norms. He asserts that Hopi treats what SAE speakers consider counter-nouns as mass nouns when referring to manifested plurals. For example, instead of saying 10 days in Hopi, he suggests that speakers might use an expression more accurately translated as Danis repeated 10 times. He interprets this as further evidence of Hopi's focus on processes and repetitions, rather than discrete objects. This claim requires careful consideration of the specific linguistic data. One must examine the way Hopi speakers actually express quantities and pluralities. Are there instances where they do use counter-nouns in a way similar to SAE languages? Are there alternative interpretations of the expressions that Whorf analyzes as mass nouns? The enumeration system is another point of contention, needing robust data to support the argument. Section 9, Noun classification and concrete meaning. Whorf explores noun classification in Hopi, suggesting that nouns are categorized according to semantic features related to their physical properties or functional significance. He claims that Hopi noun classes are not merely arbitrary grammatical groupings, but reflect a sophisticated understanding of the world. Whorf may present specific semantic features, such as shape, material, or function which he claims dictate noun affiliation to a specific class. A thorough investigation of Hopi noun classification is invaluable. Are there readily identifiable semantic features correlating with noun class membership? Are there exceptions to the rules, or instances where the classification is ambiguous? Also, is there evidence that these noun classes influence Hopi speakers' perception or cognition in any way? These are important questions to address when evaluating the claim that Hopi noun classification reflects unique understanding of the world. The noun classification system should reflect, or influence, the speaker's cognition, not be just another grammatical curiosity. Section 10, Events, Duration, and Intensity. Whorf analyzes the ways Hopi expresses events, durations, and intensities. He discusses how Hopi speakers might convey the intensity of an event, not by directly quantifying it, but rather by utilizing semantic modifiers or adverbs describing the process involved. He argues that this approach highlights Hopi's focus on the qualitative aspects of events rather than their quantitative measurement. Whorf's arguments about the lack of quantification of events and intensity levels call for careful scrutiny. How do Hopi speakers describe events of longer duration versus shorter duration? How do they differentiate between events of varying intensity? If they cannot directly quantify these aspects, then how do they communicate these differences to one another? Are there alternative ways, besides direct quantification, that speakers effectively convey these ideas, perhaps through metaphorical language or idiomatic expressions? The depth and nuance of the analysis will benefit the thorough examination of the expression of duration and intensity. Section 11. The semantic and cultural implications. Whorf explores the broader semantic and cultural implications of the linguistic differences he identifies. He posits that the Hopi language shapes their worldview, influencing their perception of time, space, and reality. Though a strong assertion, a careful exploration of the cultural implications strengthens a linguistic argument. Whorf might suggest that their lack of tense leads Hopi speakers to be less concerned with planning for the future, or that their focus on processes leads them to have a greater appreciation for the interconnectedness of things. It is essential to approach these claims with nuance and caution. Is there concrete evidence that the Hopi language directly influences their behavior and beliefs? Or are there other cultural and environmental factors that might explain the observed differences? The implications should be carefully considered, avoiding overly deterministic interpretations and respecting the complexity of the relationship between language and culture. Section 12 Contemporary Reception and Later Revisions. The reception of Whorf's work was mixed. While some linguists and anthropologists embraced his ideas, others expressed skepticism about the strength of his evidence and the validity of his methodology. His ideas received criticism surrounding methodological issues, namely the lack of rigorous fieldwork and the potential to impose his own interpretations on the Hopi language. Some critics argued that Whorf overemphasized the differences between Hopi and Isai languages, and that his claims about the influence of language on thought were exaggerated. Subsequent revisions of Whorf's work have attempted to address some of these criticisms, providing more rigorous evidence and clarifying the nature of the relationship between language and thought. Later scholars revised Whorf's claims concerning language and thought to be more nuanced and sophisticated. These revisions moved away from deterministic interpretations and emphasized the ways in which language can influence, rather than determine. Section 13 critiques data and interpretation. Critiques of Whorf's work have often focused on the specifics of his data and interpretations. Some linguists have argued that his analysis of Hopi grammar is inaccurate and that he misinterpreted certain linguistic forms. They argue against what they consider the faulty interpretation of verb forms and the lack of attention to dialectal variation. Other critics have challenged his claims about the absence of tense in Hopi, and have pointed to evidence suggesting that Hopi speakers do express temporal relations in various ways. Careful examination of the linguistic data and consideration of alternative interpretations are essential to assess the validity of Whorf's claims. There are multiple perspectives, and each should be evaluated based on methodology and evidence. Even seemingly minor details from the data or interpretation can create a shift in the understanding of a critical claim. Section 14 The ongoing debate linguistic relativity. Despite the criticisms, Whorf's work has had a lasting impact on the field of linguistics. It has helped to stimulate research on linguistic relativity and has raised important questions about the relationship between language, thought, and culture. While some linguists are still skeptical about the strong version of the Whorfian hypothesis language determines thought, most agree that language can influence thought in subtle and complex ways. Whorf's insights continue to inspire linguists and anthropologists to explore the diversity of human languages and the intricate ways in which they shape our understanding of the world. The ongoing debate surrounding linguistic relativity represents a testament to the enduring influence of Whorf's work. Section 15 Revisiting segmentative and punctual verbs. Whorf's specific analysis of punctual and segmentative aspects in Hopi verbs remains a subject of discussion. The original claim, stating the division represents a core difference with Isai languages, needs careful reconsideration in light of subsequent research. Later studies of Hopi grammar have offered alternative interpretations of the verb system, and some linguists now question whether the punctual segmentative dissension is as fundamental as Whorf claimed. However, the concepts of punctuality and segmentativity have proven useful in the study of aspect in other languages, and Whorf's work has helped to draw attention to the importance of aspect in linguistic theory. Whorf's concepts have been applied to other languages and provide a valuable framework for characterizing verb systems beyond Hopi. Even if the original analysis is not entirely accurate, it stimulated theoretical development within linguistics. Section 16 The legacy of Whorf's Hopi analysis. Whorf's analysis of Hopi, while debated and revised, has undeniably shaped the field of linguistic relativity. The legacy of Whorf's Hopi analysis underscores the importance of careful fieldwork, rigorous analysis, and a critical approach to linguistic theory. The debate surrounding his work serves as a reminder that linguistic research is an ongoing process, and that our understanding of language and its relation to thought is constantly evolving. Despite the criticisms and revisions, Whorf's name remains synonymous with the idea that language can shape our perception of reality, solidifying his place in the history of linguistics. Whorf successfully popularized the idea, which remains a topic of intense interest. In conclusion, while specific claims within the punctual and segmentative aspects of verbs in hope have been debated and revised over time, the work's enduring significance lies in its profound exploration of linguistic diversity and its challenge to the assumption of a universal cognitive framework. The meticulous analysis of Whorf's detailed investigation of Hopi grammar serves as a valuable, if contentious, jumping-off point for subsequent research relating to language, cognition, and culture. It urges continued, rigorous and critical inquiry into the ways languages sculpt our perception of the world.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.